Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep.
You know, that's one of the first prayers most of us learn. And in the innocence of childhood, when we haven't learned to doubt, we go to bed each night genuinely believing that angels will stand by our bed keeping us safe. We assume that our prayers will be answered. But then we begin to grow up, and we learn that life is full of disappointment, heartache, and suffering. Somewhere along the way, our childlike trust is shattered, and as a result, sometimes we begin to doubt the power of prayer. Can you really expect God to be listening when you speak to Him? Does it really make a difference when you pray, or do the words just kind of bounce off the ceiling? Stay with us, because in a moment, we're going to tackle the subject of prayer head on.
It has stood the test of time. God's book, the Bible. Still relevant in today's complex world. It is written. Sharing hope around the globe. Presented by Sean Boonstra.
Now I lay me down.
You know, a little while ago, a friend of ours had lost her driver's license in the airport, and she was understandably worried. So my daughters, aged 2 and 5, got down on their knees and asked Jesus to help her find that driver's license. And you can imagine their excitement when she went back to the airport and actually found it. "Daddy," they said, "Jesus answered our prayers." Well, the rest of that day, those 2 little girls asked Jesus for one thing after another. And I've got to admire that kind of simple faith. As a preacher, it's refreshing to see 2 people who trust God so implicitly. And personally, I hope they never start to doubt. But I'm afraid, as they grow up, they're going to discover that you don't always get what you ask for. Maybe you've had the experience of sitting in church, listening to people talk about their prayers being answered. And in the back of your mind, as you listen to their stories of miraculous intervention, you wonder, why in the world doesn't God answer my prayer like that? Let me ask you something. Is there a formula that guarantees success in your prayer life? I've heard people suggest that if you don't pray a certain way using certain words, God will never listen to you. And I've heard other people say that if God doesn't give you what you ask for, it's because you just don't have enough faith. Is that true? Today, Pastor Mark Finley is with me in studio to talk about the subject of prayer. Mark, it's great to see you again.
Sean, I'm glad to be here. This is really a vital subject.
It's an important one, and I want to cut right to the chase. Listen, is there really any evidence that prayer works? And I'm talking about scientific evidence. People say, oh, those Christians can believe anything they want. I want proof.
Sean, Christianity is based on faith. Faith that God loves us, faith that God only desires our best good. And if there were no room for doubt, there would never be need for faith. So you can't prove God in a test tube.
Right.
But there are some fascinating scientific studies that have been done recently on prayer that, at least to my mind, give me more evidence to believe than to disbelieve. Now, it doesn't take away the need for faith, but the evidence, I believe, is on the side of faith and not on the side of doubt. There are 79 medical schools in the United States that have courses on prayer and healing.
Oh, you're kidding.
There are. And in 1980s, there were only 3. And the reason for that is this. The scientific studies, 200 scientific studies have been done in intercessory prayer. Some of them have been called double-blind studies.
Now, explain that for me a little bit.
Okay, a double-blind study is one in which the people praying are praying for specific people, but neither the doctors nor the nurses nor the people being prayed for know that they're being prayed for. In other words, if a person is being prayed for, the argument would be that he will send out positive chemical endorphins in his mind, and the positive thinking will heal himself.
Right.
There's no divine activity in it.
They'd say it's simply psychosomatic. He knows he's being prayed for, and so it helps.
Right. In fact, there are physicians who are atheists that say to their patients, you go pray. Not because they believe in prayer or they believe in God, but because they believe that if you pray, you'll release these positive chemical endorphins and you'll heal yourself.
So tell me what happened then when nobody knew that the prayer was happening.
Okay, the first study was done by Dr. Randolph Bird in San Francisco, in the San Francisco General Hospital. It was done on people who had coronary bypass surgery. There were like 393 of these people, and they divided them into two groups, the prayed-for group and the non-prayed-for group after surgery. Neither group knew that they were being prayed for. So it's difficult for your mind to influence your body if you don't know you're being prayed for.
Right, right.
The names of the prayed-for group were given to committed, faithful Christians. They prayed for them. Something remarkable happened. The ones that were prayed for had far less infections, far less complications. They improved much, much more quickly. In fact, this study was reported in 1988. It was reported in the Southern Medical Journal. The title of the study was The Positive Therapeutic Effects of Intercessory Prayer in a Coronary Care Unit Population. And the study said, if what we tested was a medication, it would have become the most popular medication in all the world for treating heart disease.
It was that effective.
It was that effective. Just amazing. Dr. Lubvicki studied 3,300 patients from 1991 to 1993 with bloodstream infections, and he studied their hospital stay. The prayed-for patients had a drastically reduced hospital stay. One of my favorite studies is a study done in the Cho General Hospital, that's CHA General Hospital in Seoul, Korea. It was a study done on in vitro fertilization. Women who would come in and have in vitro fertilization to be pregnant. The pregnancy rate in the studies was 26%. Now, the interesting thing that they did was this. They studied, what if we start praying for these women who are in vitro fertilization? No Christian church was involved in monitoring the study. It was a study monitored by the hospital, monitored by physicians, but they gave the names of these women out to praying Christians. The in vitro fertilization rate from the ones that were being prayed for went from 26% to over 50%.
26 all the way up to 50. So that's significant.
Yeah, if you want your wife to get pregnant and you're married, prayer is really an effective method.
No, I seem to remember we didn't have children for quite a while, and then after we had our first one, somebody told me, Sean, we were praying you would have a child, and there the child came.
Are they continuing to pray?
Yeah, well, I've asked them to stop now. We have a lovely family.
Sean, prayer and science are not antithesis. There's no big wall between them.
I agree.
Prayer makes a significant difference, and there is hard scientific evidence. Now, I need to also say that of the 200 studies, in about 2/3 of them, prayer makes a dramatic difference. In about 1/3 of them, statistically, we've not seen a difference.
Amazing. Amazing. Now, I know somebody's listening, they say, all right, there are the statistics. There is evidence that prayer works. But still, as I go to church, I see some people who have a dynamic prayer life, and mine just doesn't feel that way, and I don't seem to get answers like other people. Are there principles that lead to a stronger prayer life?
Sean, as I have read the New Testament particularly, I've isolated a number of principles that, at least to me, make real sense from Jesus' prayer life. The first principle is found in Mark chapter 1.
Mark 1.
And verse 35.
Okay.
Jesus is speaking, and he says, now in the morning, having risen a great while before daylight, he went out and departed to a solitary place to pray. Actually, this is a text about Jesus, not so much him speaking, but he speaks a little later in the passage. But in this passage, Mark records that early in the morning, Jesus went out to pray. So I think this is the first principle. Have a time to pray.
Set something aside.
Set something aside. Every morning or every evening, most people find in the morning they like to start their day with prayer. So the first principle is have a regular time to pray. You have a regular time to eat. You don't say, well, I'm going to eat at 6 o'clock today, 10 o'clock tomorrow, 2 o'clock. No, most families have regular meal times. For a growing spiritual experience, have a regular time to pray.
So choose some time of the day when you know that you have the privacy and the alertness, but schedule it. Do this regularly.
Right. In my own personal life, I certainly pray in the morning, but that is not my most effective time to pray. I pray in the morning, but my most effective time to pray is after things are done through the day. Although I've started my day with prayer and I pray throughout the day, the evening time for me, as I reflect upon the day, as I look back on the day, is the time when I have my most meaningful experience with God. The Bible doesn't tell us that the time to pray is the same for everybody, but it does say, have a time to pray.
Right.
The second thing you notice about Jesus' prayer life is he had a place to pray.
Yeah.
He often went to Gethsemane to pray.